In this session, we will discuss about synchronization in distributed systems. In the previous session, we discussed about how communication takes place in distributed system. We discussed about the OSI layer, we discussed about the ATM model, that is asynchronous transfer mode. We also discussed on the client-server model, that is request and reply model, and also on group communication. So this was regarding communication in distributed system. What about synchronization? So in this session, we will speak about certain algorithms that helps synchronize processes across different machines. Now, in a single CPU machines, critical regions, mutual exclusion, and other synchronization problems are usually handled with the help of semaphores and monitors. Whereas the semaphores and monitors cannot be used when we are having a distributed system. We have to find some solution how to handle synchronization across different machines in a distributed system. Now, before going through some algorithms, we require to know what are logical clocks. Nearly all computers have a circuit for keeping track of time. Despite the widespread use of the word clock to refer to these devices, they are not actually clocks in the usual sense. Timer is the best word that we can use for it. A computer timer is usually a precisely machined quartz crystal, which is when kept under tension, it will oscillate at a well-defined frequency. Now this depends on the kind of crystal that is used, how it is cut, and the amount of tension it is placed in. Associated with each crystal, there are two resistors. The first one being the counter and the second one is the holding resistor. Each oscillation of the crystal decrements the counter by 1. When the counter gets to 0, an interrupt is generated and the counter is reloaded from the holding resistor. In this way, it is possible to program a timer to generate an interrupt 60 times a second or at any other desired frequency. Each interrupt is called as one clock tick. Now when the system is booted initially, it usually asks the operator to enter the current date and time, which is then converted into a number of ticks after some known starting date and which is stored in the memory. At every clock tick, the interrupt service procedure adds 1 to the time second in the memory. In this way, the clock is kept up to date. Now let's try and understand what is a clock skew. As soon as multiple CPUs are introduced, each with its own clock. Now here we have one CPU with a different timing, here with a different clock, here with a different clock, and here with a different clock. Now although the frequency at which each crystal oscillator runs is usually fairly stable, it is impossible to guarantee that the crystal in different computers all run at exactly the same frequency. In practice, when a system has n computers, all n crystals will run at slightly different rates, causing the clock gradually to get out of sync and give different values when it is read out. Now this difference in time is called as clock skew. So finally coming to the definition of logical clocks. So for a certain class of algorithms, it is the internal consistency of the clocks that matter, not whether they are particularly close to the real time. Now for this type of algorithm, it is conventional to speak of the clocks as logical clocks. Now with this, we are back to our original question, whether it is possible to synchronize all the clocks to produce a single unambiguous time standard. So to understand this, we will refer to the Lamport's algorithm. Now Lamport, also called as Leslie Lamport, is an American scientist who has various research papers in distributed system. Now some of his research papers are time clocks and the ordering of events in distributed system, how to make a multiprocessor computer that correctly executes multiprocess programs, and there are many more in distributed system. So we will see what is Lamport's algorithm. Now what did Lamport point out was, he said that the clock synchronization need not be absolute. That is, if two processes do not interact, it is not necessary that the clocks be synchronized, because the lack of synchronization would not be observable and thus could not cause any problems. But what was more important was that the order in which the event occurs was more important. Now, Lamport's defined a relation called as happens before. Okay? Now, what does this happen before? Now, if we have an expression A arrow B, okay, now this arrow is read as, or this entire statement means as A happens before B. That means all processes agree that this first event occurs, and only after this first event A, B occurs. Now this happens before relation can be observed in two situations. The first situation is if A and B are events in the same process and A occurs before B, then we say that A happens before B is true. The second situation is if A is the event of a message being sent by one process and B is the event of the message being received by another process, then A happens before B is also considered to be true. A message cannot be received before it is sent. It is very obvious. Or even at the same time it is sent, since it takes finite amount of time to arrive. For example, if you send a mail at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, you cannot expect your receiver to receive the email at 3:30 in the afternoon, right? It will be obviously somewhere after 4. Okay? Now this happens before relation is also transitive. Okay? That is, if A happens before B and B happens before C, that means A happens before C. Now this is our transitive relation. Now coming to the exact algorithm, that is Lamport's logical clock algorithm, we will see how it works. Just a brief introduction to this algorithm. Each process uses a local counter which is an integer, and the initial value of the counter is kept to 0. Now the process increments its counter when a send or receive instruction takes place. The counter is assigned to the event as its timestamp. The sender event carries its timestamp and it is updated. Now how it is updated? It is timestamp equals to the local clock of that machine plus 1. For a receive event, the counter is updated in this particular format. The maximum value is taken among the local clock and the message, the incoming message, the timestamp of the incoming message plus 1. We will see a small problem on this Lamport's algorithm and try and understand how it works. Now assuming that we have three different processes, distributed processes. Okay. Initially the timestamp of this process is 0. So time process of this is 0. Here also it is 0, and the time stamp of process 3 is also 0. Next. Now, as we have seen in our introduction of Lambert's algorithm, if any event occurs, then the timestamp will be Ts equals to Ts plus 1. That is the timestamp plus 1. If a message is being sent, then the timestamp will be same. That is Ts equals to Ts plus 1. Now, initially, for process 1, the timestamp is equals to 0. Now, an event occurs in P1. So, the current timestamp is 0 plus 1 is added to it. So, now the current timestamp of process 1 is 1. Next, an event occurs in P3, that is process 3. So, the current timestamp of process 3 is also 0 right now. So, the event that occurs at this particular point is timestamp plus 1. So, the current timestamp is 0, 0 plus 1 equals to 1. So, at this point, the timestamp is 1 of process 3. Next, an event occurred in P3 wherein it has sent a message to process P2. It means process P2 has received a message. So now when it has received a message, we make use of this formula, that is maximum of its own timestamp, maximum amount on timestamp and the sender's timestamp plus 1. So now over here, we use this formula. Now we have to find out the maximum among these two values. So the timestamp of process 2 right now is 0, correct? Over at this point it is 0. And the sender's timestamp is 1. So we have 0 and 1. So the maximum of 0 and 1 is 1 plus 1. So the current timestamp at this point is 2. Next, an event occurs in P1. So now the current timestamp of this process is already 1. So 1 plus 1, we get the current timestamp of this particular process as 2. Next, an event occurs in P3. So similarly, just like P1, again the computation will be the same. So the current timestamp is 1 plus 1. So now the current timestamp of this will be 2. So if you observe over here carefully, over here the timestamp is 1, but when it reached some other process, the timestamp or the local timestamp of that machine was 0, but when the message arrived, the timestamp over here is shown as 2. We move ahead with this example. Now, process P2 receives a message. So, what will be the timestamp? So, now when process P2 is receiving a message from P1, okay, so the current timestamp over here is 2, and the timestamp of the system is also 2. Current timestamp is also 2 over here. So the maximum among this is 2. So 2 plus 1 timestamp is 3. So at this point the timestamp becomes 3. Next, we assume that an event occurs in P1. So when an event occurs in P1, we see what is the current timestamp. So now the current timestamp in P1 is 2. So 2 plus 1, what we get is 3. Now a message is being sent from P2 to P1. Okay. So now what is the current timestamp over here? So since at this point the current timestamp was 3, so 3 plus 1, the value is 4. So now what has happened is P1 has received a message from process P2. So we have to find out what will be the timestamp at this particular. So now when P1 receives a message, we know that the incoming timestamp is 4, the local timestamp is 3. So maximum of 4 and 3 is 4 plus 1, which gives us the timestamp as 5. Next, we assume that P1 sends a message to P3. So P1 is sending a message to P3. So now the timestamp over here will be the current timestamp, that is 5 plus 1, which will give us the timestamp as 6. So what will be the timestamp at this particular point? So the local timestamp of process P3, you know, at this particular point is 2, right? 2, and the timestamp of the incoming event is 6. So we find the maximum of this, that is 2, 6, maximum is 6. So the timestamp becomes 7. So in this case, the timestamp is 7. This is how the Lamport algorithm performs synchronization across different machines. So we'll see what example is given in the syllabus. Okay. So we consider 3 processes which are running on 3 different machines. Now each machine has its own clock running at its own speed. So you see over here, when the clock has ticked 6 times in P0, it has ticked 8 times in P1, and at the same time it ticks 10 times in P2. Each clock runs at a constant rate. If you see the values over here, values are constant, right? But the rates are different across all these 3 because there is difference in the crystal. So at time 6, P0 sends a message. Let's say assume that the message is A to P1. The clock in P1 reads 16 when it arrives over here. So now what P1 will conclude is that it has taken 16 ticks to make its journey. That is 16 minus 6 gives you 10. Similarly, when the message moves from P1 to P2, okay, it is taking 16 ticks, right? Because it receives at 40 over here. So 40 minus 24 gives us 60. Now then the message moves from 2 to 1 and 1 to 0. So message from 2 to 1 leaves at 60 and arrives at 56. Similarly, the message from D, that is message D, from 1 to 0 leaves at 64 and arrives at 54, which is totally not possible. Both these things are not possible. It is just like saying that you have an email which is sent at 4 p.m. Okay, so this is the sender, and the receiver side, you are saying that the email has been received at 3:30 p.m. on the same day, which is not possible. So what does Lamport algorithm do is, as we have seen in our previous example, how it is updating its time. Okay? So now a correction has to be made to this figure. So what we assume over here is message move from 0 to 1 in 10 ticks. Over here it takes 40 minus 24 ticks, whereas when it is leaving from 2 to 1, we say it has left at 60 and here it has arrived at 60. Similarly, it leaves at 61 from this process and arrives at 78 from this process. So this is how the Lamport's algorithm works. It helps in synchronization in a distributed system. So what is our conclusion? We assign time to all events in a distributed system subject to the following conditions. Okay? So if A happens before B in the same process, we can write that the time of A is less than the time of B. If A and B represent sending and receiving of the message, then also the time or the count of A should be less than the count of B. And for all events, that is A and B, nowhere you will find that the time of A will never be equal to the time of B. Thank you.